This microphone is roughly 4 to 5 times the price of this microphone. No one cares. Me saying that just now hurts a little bit because as a musician or creative person, I think it's something that we're always thinking in the back of our mind. We're writing a song, or maybe you're someone that writes a book, or you're being creative and you're thinking to yourself, no one's gonna care about this. You're thinking, I may really like this thing, but I don't know if it's gonna sell well. I don't know if this is gonna make me money in the future. For a long time, I've been thinking about this concept of people caring about what we do, and I wanted to make this video. And the very thing I'm trying to communicate in the video is the thing that was stopping me from making it in the first place. Because there are so many people out there who are professional touring musicians. There are celebrities out there who they make their living off of their music. And I thought, who am I to make this kind of video talking to other musicians and telling them what they should be thinking when they're creating music? So I put off making the video. Even though this is things I'm going through in my own life, and I'm thinking about how this is affecting the way that I make videos here on YouTube. It's affecting the way that I play music and record music at home. And I wanted to share this, and I've not known who to share it with other than we'll just make a YouTube video. So in this video, I've got a message for musicians out there that are like me. You're not a professional, you're not touring, you don't do music for a living. I hope this will be an encouragement to you. And maybe if you're not even a musician, if you pick something else along the way, it's this idea that you could be free from the idea about people caring about what you do. So the first thing I want to talk about is gear acquisition syndrome. I mentioned this in one of my earlier videos. My wife and I decided to record an album one year, way back in like 2013, 2014. We spent a lot of money, and the money was spent by me thinking I needed to have the most professional level of equipment. So I went out, and this was the first big microphone purchase I ever made. It's the Rode NT2A. When I bought this microphone, I thought everybody's gonna love it. They're gonna love the sound of this album. And even with our friends and family, one of the biggest comments that we got was people couldn't understand much what my wife was saying. The articulation was all off. Nobody made a comment about what microphone did you use. Most people that listen to the album don't even know what microphones do, the difference between a condenser microphone or a dynamic microphone. They don't know the difference between an external microphone preamp and the preamp that's in your audio interface. And I think that as musicians, we get so tied up on the gear that we lose track of the fact that if you're trying to make music for a mass group of people, the only people that are gonna really know the difference between something like a Neumann and a Rode microphone is such a small percentage of the people in the world. You're not gonna get that reciprocation of what you're interested in. If I'm trying to brag about having a Neumann TLM 103, 6 billion people in the world, there's probably, 10 million people that could spot the differences between like a Neumann and a Rode microphone. You're going after a really small market, and with that can come a lot of frustrations. Most of the frustrations that I've had over the years is I'm feeling like I don't have good enough gear to justify what I'm trying to do, when at the end of the day, what I'm really trying to do is to record music, make music fun, and get that music out to as many people as possible. And nowhere along that process am I limited to having to use things like Neumann or having to use the most fancy gear. So be careful, because honestly, as a musician, no one really cares about the gear that you're using. This drum set here in the room is a Pearl Forum series. It's one of the most affordable drum kits that you can get. It's got really nice heads on it, and I know how to tune the drums, and I kind of know how to mix drums, but I never get comments about, oh, your drum set sounds like garbage. Well, that gives me confidence, because I feel like I'm not having to pony up a bunch of money for something expensive. I feel like I'm using what I've got and I'm enjoying it. So if you're out there and you're putting an investment in the tools and you're not having fun with it, you might be guilty of having gear acquisition syndrome. Which brings me to my next point, which is trying to fit in or trying to be cool. One time I was called to play the bass guitar, and we were gonna do this event, and it was a traveling event. So we had this big trailer, and we loaded up our instruments, and I showed up with my Austin P bass, which is literally back there on the rack. I did not have a case for my P bass at all. The reason I didn't have a case for it is because I literally spent $20 on it at a pawn shop, and I felt like spending more than $20 on something like a case for my bass kind of unnecessary. I wasn't worried about it getting dinged, scratched, or beaten up going to play this event. People that were there, the band, the singer, they all noticed, well, you don't have a case for your bass? They didn't even recognize I had an Austin P bass at all. To them, it just sounded like a bass guitar. And so Yeah, I had to have a few conversations with a handful of people that were like heavy into music, but for the most part, everyone in the audience, no one had any idea that I was playing some sort of pawn shop bass guitar. And that really solidified it for me that if you're trying to fit in or if you're trying to be cool, think about who you're trying to fit in with, because the people that you're trying to appease by the clothes that you wear or the instruments that you play, you feel like you got to have a certain brand or something to fit in. You need to think about, are these the people that you really want the approval of? Because you'll miss out on the masses of other people who really just want to get to know you for who you are, and you might even stand out from the crowd nowadays if you have something like an Austin P bass rather than a Fender. The third thing I'm thinking for musicians, it comes down to software. So I do a lot of videos on PreSonus Studio One, and that's the software I use when I'm recording music. I've had at least some sort of project based in Pro Tools, Logic, GarageBand, Ableton Live, a little bit of Cubase back in the day, but I pretty much had a handful in every sort of software, and I keep going back to PreSonus Studio One. Now I know that PreSonus Studio One doesn't have the acclaim or doesn't have the history that Avid Pro Tools does, but again, I got to a point in my life where I'm just like, when my parents and when my friends listen to the music that I'm recording, no one sits there and asks me, so did you do it on Pro Tools? Did you record it on Ableton? They don't know what that stuff means. So when you're sitting there nitpicking about what kind of software you're using, at the end of the day, when you're a musician and you're recording music, people are gonna listen to what's coming out of the speakers. They don't care about how you got there, they just care about the end result. So don't get hung up on a lot of this digital stuff, like whether you use a Mac or Windows, like that was really big back in the day. Everyone was always fighting about whether Mac was only for music and Windows is for like doing spreadsheets and stuff. Just go with what you have, because again, it's about being content with who you are and what you've got. Don't try to follow the crowd, whether it's learning a new software or having to use something that you don't already have. The fourth thing I want to say is that your opinions are actually relevant. And this comes up all the time with music, because as musicians, we always look at people who are ahead of us, people who are the professionals. So I want to know what John Mayer's guitar tone is, because John Mayer is successful. John Mayer is always getting praise because of his guitar tone. So I need to have a tone like John Mayer. And the more you press into that, the more you end up neglecting your very own opinion. You need to know as a musician or as a creative person that your opinion definitely matters. This comes up a lot when my wife is writing songs. So she writes songs and she has certain lyrics and she has a certain meter of those lyrics. So many a times she'll write a song and it's in 4/4 and then the time signature changes. There'll be like a measure of 3 or a measure of 6 or something really crazy like 7, and then it'll go right back to 4. And the thing that I press her on is like, okay, well, you know that like music on the radio doesn't really do that. But she's writing it because in her opinion, that is what she likes. And I think we all need to have that kind of perspective when it comes to making music in general. You need to know that your opinion matters. If you're doing something that you don't enjoy, but you're just doing it just to have the same sound as John Mayer or somebody else on the radio, just know that your opinion matters. And oftentimes the music that you are going to come up with is going to be a lot more unique and personal to you, and that will speak more to people than you just trying to copycat everyone else. The next thing I want to talk about are limitations. And if you're a home studio owner, if you have a music room in your house, you're very familiar with limitations, because if you go on Reddit or you go on the internet, first thing people are going to tell you is if you're trying to set up a studio is you got to put up some acoustic treatment. It's like, it doesn't matter what else you do, put up acoustic treatment or what you're doing is garbage. And I just want to tell you that if you have drums in a small bedroom like this, I've been told many a times on the internet that recording drums at home is almost impossible. You're never going to get a good sound because small rooms don't have good sounding drums. Anytime you're hearing these rules or limitations put in front of you, you do need to recognize that there is truth within the limitations. So yes, it's going to be more difficult to record drums in a small bedroom than it is in a giant studio or a treated room itself, but that shouldn't stop you from playing drums. It shouldn't stop you from recording drums, because you may be somebody who right now at this moment you can't afford to put up acoustic treatment, or you're in an apartment situation, there's nothing you can really do about it. Well, rather than you sitting on your hands and waiting on acoustic treatment to appear, just go ahead and play the drums. You might be using an audio interface. Like I have a Sapphire Pro 40. It is an old interface, and I was even told by a salesperson at Sweetwater that, oh, you need to upgrade your audio interface because that one's no good. And I've been using it like this whole time on YouTube. So anytime you're hearing drums, you're hearing it through that old audio interface. So when it comes to limitations, yes, you can recognize that within the limitations, there's going to be some truth, but you don't need to be sitting on your hands. Go ahead and get active and record where you're at, because Billie Eilish, for instance, when she had her album come out with all the Grammys and stuff, well, she recorded that album on the bed in her bedroom at her house. So that was very unconventional. Nobody seemed to care. In fact, they seemed to praise her for it as if it was like, wow, you did this in a bedroom studio. We can't believe it. Next thing is that making money is really rare. Try to think about any musician that you know, like a local musician. If you happen to know somebody that travels and does music for a living, do they seem like they're just rolling in the dough? Now, there are some people, like I've known groups and people that have these giant tour buses and they travel all around and they do shows and stuff, but they will tell you that the money is not in the music necessarily, it's in the merchandise. So when people buy t-shirts, when people buy swag, when they buy sunglasses and beanies, all those things at the merch table, they're able to pocket way more of that money than when somebody goes on iTunes and buys music. So if you're going into music to make money, you really need to find somebody that's more like business oriented, because making money in music is very, very difficult. If you're going in it to make money, it's almost like a separate field or separate industry. So if you're not business minded, don't go into it as a way of making money. You really need to do it because that's what you love doing, that's what you're passionate about, and then let the money stuff kind of take care of itself, or get a friend or a pal who can kind of manage the business side of it for you. So that brings me to the last point, is that you really need to kind of know what lane you're in and which lane you want to stick with. And that has to do with being a hobbyist, being a celebrity, or being a professional. So obviously, if you're a professional, that would be anybody who is making a living off of music. If you're getting paid to make music, you are a professional. Congratulations. That is very like a desirable field to go into. If you're a guitar player and you can just take out your guitar and play a little bit of guitar on somebody else's music, that's pretty fun. You could be the guy or the girl in town who's traveling around. You're playing with other bands, you're recording guitar for them, and then you're pretty much done. That's a pretty sweet situation. It doesn't happen a lot. I don't know many people who are just professional musicians. They're usually doing a couple of jobs at the same time. The other one is being the hobbyist. So if you're somebody who, these are like my kind of people, if you're a hobbyist, you may make some money off of what you're doing, but it's generally like, if you've got a day that's free during the week, what are you doing? And if you're somebody who goes fishing on that day off, or if you're somebody who goes to a football game on your day off, like that may not be an interest of yours. But if your day off is you going into your music room or your studio and recording music or doing art, you are a hobbyist. And the good thing that can come from that is that you'll always be able to find happiness or joy in doing what you're doing, because you're doing what you love. The limitations of having to make money aren't relevant to you. You could record music, release an album, it not sell any records at all, and you can be like, I'm glad I did that. A hobbyist also is going to have some of the negatives in that you're not going to be making a lot of money, at least at first. So aside from the hobbyist who is really passionate about music or art but not making any money, and then the professional who's making money and still be passionate about music, celebrities are, to me, people who are going into music or they're using art as a means to get to something like fame or wealth. So if you want to be rich, you probably aren't going to be like a hobbyist. If you want to be famous, you're definitely not going to be like a hobbyist. You may be a professional, will have some sort of fame, but a lot of people when they're going into music, like when they want to learn how to play guitar, if I could get them to honestly speak, they're not wanting to learn guitar because guitar is really fun and guitar is really cool. They're wanting to learn guitar because they're trying to use it to get to something else. They want to learn guitar so that they can be more famous on Instagram, or they want to have a profile picture where everybody can see that they're holding a guitar, or they want people to know that their status is, I am now a musician. So anyone who's seeking the fame or the wealth that comes from being a musician, like that's the celebrity-minded person. So for me, I feel like I've had more success in my life being someone who has been more hobby focused, knowing that Yes, there's a chance, like just like doing this YouTube stuff, there may be a lot of views on this video. I may not get hardly any views on this video. I may get a lot of subscribers on this video. I really don't know, but I would make the video either way because I enjoy making the video. That is an attribute of somebody who is in the hobbyist category. Now, YouTube has provided some income, so I have been monetized on this channel, but this is not something that's paying the bills for me. So I don't see myself as a professional. And of course, the celebrity mindset is going to be there with everyone, but I know that the more that I focus too much on the metrics, I focus too much on the money, I end up being more miserable. And so for everyone out there that is a musician and you feel like you've had some sympathy or there's some sympathetic words being spoken here between the two of us, I just want you to know that you should be able to have fun and pursue making music or creating art because that's really what you like to do. All these other pressures about whether you have the nicest gear or the right kind of computer or the right kind of studio to record in, let all that stuff go to the side and you focus on doing what you love and what you're passionate about. I don't know if that spoke to you or if you have any thoughts or comments, you can let me know in the comments section. I always try to get to as many of the comments as I can, so feel free to reach out and I very well likely will respond. Thanks so much for watching this video and I'll see you next time.